Okay, so in this concentration in sort of now investing in great businesses, can you be specific about what kind of business you look for? What are the characteristics of a great business in particular? What detailed characteristics you look for, and how you put a value on those businesses?
Yeah. Well, great businesses are the ones who really have above average returns to invested capital. But that kind of businesses usually attract imitators, competitors. Everybody wants to have above average returns with the invested capital. And so truly good business is the one who can fend off competitors, who can really have enduring competitive advantage and cap that higher than average return on invested capital, and hopefully also have a long runway of continuous growth. Those are the businesses we're looking for. And they could really come in all industries, in all shapes and forms. But they're rare. They're really, really rare. To have a business that generates above average returns over a long time on a compounded fashion is really against the natural orders of things. It really only a small slice of all businesses belong to that category. So if you're really lucky enough to really find one of those long-term compounders, all you have to do is really to own them and own them for the longest period of time. Now, it helps when you really buy them at the time when they happen to be treated at a discount to their intrinsic value, so that if you were wrong about them, you won't lose money, and if you're right, you have more returns over time. But over the longest period of time, if you do own them through the up and downs, your return roughly approximates basically the actual business return to the actual capital invested in the business itself over the long term. The two tend to really converge pretty closely. And so understanding and studying the nature of that business, the dynamic of competition is of really the most important thing as the investor and as a student of the business. And as I said, there isn't really a set of things that really make them that way. Every business really built their fortress slightly differently. And you just have to really truly be honest with yourself and study from every possible angles until you're really convinced that the edge that they're currently enjoying truly are enduring, and they truly have a long runway ahead of them. And if they prove to be exactly as you predicted over the years, we really want to really stay on them through the up and down, thick and thin, not to be really dissuaded easily.
Okay, can I actually talk a little bit about those businesses? I mean, in limiting competition, and I think Charlie Munger is the master at this, you're really interested in moats. That is, the barriers to entry into the business, because it's keeping people out that's going to limit competition.
Yep.
If you think about a moat, there are probably two elements to that moat. So think of it from the point of view of a company trying to get into the business. One is economies of scale. How big do you have to get? How big a market share do you have to capture in order to be viable as a competitor? So in automobiles, in the global automobile market, it's really large. And if you get 1% to 2% share, you're going to be fine. In other markets, like, for example, local distribution of caffeinated soft drinks, you got to get to 20 to 25% of the market to support the infrastructure that you need and to compete. So the first thing is economies of scale. And the second thing, I think, and again, I'm sort of thinking about Charlie Munger here, is how hard is it to get that market share, which is all about customer captivity in a contested environment where unique technology will help you with that and so on. So suppose you got to get to 25% share. We know for caffeinated soft drinks that 0.2% share changes hands every year in a contested market. So to get to 25%, you're talking about 125-year moat. Do you do a calculation like that for the companies you're looking at? You look at those two elements explicitly?
Well, that and more.
Okay. So, then what's the more?
No, the scale is important. Actually, there is a scale economy in those businesses. Not everything actually have a scale economy, so sometimes the scale becomes a counterpoint, make it actually more difficult to really manage. But in a scale economy, the scale does really become a competitive advantage. And then, but the dynamic would change after a certain scale. You mentioned automobile, that's an interesting example. You know what happens in different phases of the industry. The consumer side is also important in a sense that if you have quite a bit of consumer addiction to a certain products and brand loyalty, obviously that is important. And they're good for a long time until they're not good. Things do change. New product categories would come along and brands get tired and old and not refreshed. New generations really don't like to have the same taste as their parents and grandparents. So that's really the most interesting aspect of businesses is what is only constant is the constant change. All great business changes over time. And perhaps really no business who can really remain that competitive edge for forever. But some of the business really can keep it for a very, very, very long time. And of course, when it changes, it's really upon the management team to be able to really reallocate capital towards those businesses actually now enjoying a robust competitive advantage. Now, take an example with Berkshire. It started out as a lousy businesses, losing businesses of textile in New England. And Warren and Charlie skillfully really took the last bit of the cash flow and skillfully invested in some other businesses really on the right side of the trajectory. But over time, some of those businesses began to lose its competitive advantage, and then they took that capital and allocated to the ones that. So obviously, the management capability of allocating capital also plays a very important role. And of course, that the culture of a company in the industry that's rapidly changing, so that you're always a few steps ahead of your competitors, which allows you to always surfing on the edge. That also becomes enduring competitive advantage if that culture endures. So in every specific businesses, what really make them successful are very, very different. And they change over time. And so that is the most fascinating aspect of the competitive dynamics. And also the most fascinating aspect of being an investor.